Hello, and welcome to Nick and Mel's Hyperspace. I'm Nick, and I want to thank you guys for joining us on our journeys through hyperspace. Today, we're doing a special episode, and I have a very special guest with me, a new friend that I've made through the Star Wars Book Community podcast. Hello, Justin. Welcome to joining us.
Hello there.
What we are going to do is a little different than what we normally do here on Nick and Mel's Hyperspace. Typically, we will do a comic mini-series or like a whole series and kind of review the whole thing. Right now, we're going to do a 3-part special where we are breaking down the Battle of Jakku comic maxi series written by Alex Segura. Today, we're going to do part 1, which is the first 4 issues. The subtitle is Insurgency Rising. Part of a new series that Marvel is doing. Was going to follow our original trilogy characters after the Battle of Endor and Return of the Jedi to the Battle of Jakku, which is the official end in the Star Wars canon timeline of the Galactic Civil War. So with me, like I said, I brought Justin along to talk about this first part and potentially the rest of the series. We'll just playing it by ear today. But Justin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the people who you are?
Hello, Justin out here in California. Name is The Nerdy Bookshelf on Instagram. Massive comic fan, massive Star Wars fan, and just excited to hang out and talk Star Wars all day long.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we did a pod. I think we just did one together, and I think we did the Poe Dameron series, one of the volumes of that with a Star Wars Book Community podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think we covered the first 5 or 6 issues on that because it was
something like
volume
that.
1.
Yeah, we did that one a while back, and I thought Justin would be a fun person to have on. We don't know each other too well yet, but we've had some fun conversations about books and comics so far. So appreciate you for being on again, my friend, and I'm excited to talk about this with you. Well, I guess let's backpedal a little bit and talk about the series as a whole. So for those of you that don't know, the Star Wars comics are in a transition period. Back in, I want to say September, the flagship Star Wars comic by Charles Soule ended at issue 50. That series took place in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and a lot of people were speculating and wondering what's next. Since Marvel started the rights back to Star Wars, they've been following the original trilogy cast through the trilogy in between the films, and now we're getting to the point where the trilogy's over. We've gotten to that point in the timeline where what's next, and a lot of people were curious what the next series was going to be. Justin, do you want to share your thoughts when you heard the news that we're going to be following our original trilogy cast again, but after Return of the Jedi?
Well, I would love to see how this bridges the gap between the Battle of Endor and the Battle of Jakku, because I think that's a somewhat, like, it's been an explored territory, but now we're going to get down into the details of all the little battles and skirmishes that happen in between. So I'm still unfamiliar with this area of the timeline because I haven't read those books yet, even though they are sitting up there in my TBR stack. I will eventually get to them. So I'm excited to see all the little character appearances and how it connects to the larger story in between. And we're getting right into that era where I know this is only like the first, 1 to 3 years after Battle of Endor where this all takes place. But not too far after that is the Mandalorian story. So I'm wondering, after we get through Battle of Jakku, will they continue more comics to connect those two characters, where the Mandalorian comes in and starts interacting with more original characters from the OT trilogy? So I don't know. We'll see where this goes, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were intrigued because, like you said, this has been explored in the past, but the battles and the stories we've gotten leading to the Battle of Jakku has not really involved our original trilogy cast at all. It's really been some new characters that were very fun. And I think we were talking before we recorded. You said you haven't gotten to read the Aftermath trilogy as of yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. I know, like, the overview of it. I know about, like, the major events that happened through my deep dives through Wikipedia. That happened all the way till like 3 a.m. sometimes, where I just can't stop scrolling and reading it. But I haven't actually Well, yeah, during our insomnia moments. But I haven't actually read the books or the comics that take place during that time. I mean, I own all of them. I buy them as they come out because I know eventually I will get there
Mhm.
in the timeline. But yeah, I would love to read that trilogy. And then I believe the Alphabet Squadron series deals with those events a little bit as well. Like I think Victory's Price deals with some of those events. So I would love to get there and eventually read these too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I have not read that trilogy, the Alphabet Squadron, but I've heard good things about it. So I'm interested to see how that connects to all this as well.
Yeah.
Um, that's a lot of stuff. Like I said, and I think the Squadrons, Star Wars Squadrons video game also takes place during all this as well.
Yep. Yep.
So we've gotten quite a few stories that reflect on this, but I think a lot of times with what Lucasfilm has done over the years now is when there's big events, sometimes they're a little shy to include our Luke, our Han, our Leia's involved in these major events. But I think at some point, and rightfully so, I'm glad they did it. You're going to have to address where they are. They're kind of a big elephant that's kind of hiding in the back of the room.
Yep.
Um, Before we get into like spoilers and nitty gritties of the story, um, you know, what was your initial thoughts of this first arc, the first 4 issues? Did you have any overall impressions or general thoughts?
Um, well, I think the biggest highlight that I'm really excited to explore is anything that has to do with Moff Adelhard. He is such an intriguing, interesting character with just his um, just evil ambitions of how he wants to continue the empire despite its collapse, and just how just dark of a character he is. Like I think he's the highlight of the entire series so far of this first arc. As far as the other characters, they're kind of all some of them are falling flat for me. Especially some of the dialogue writing. Like I was rereading issue 4 this morning and I laughed at a couple of the dialogue lines that were I think a little cheesy and kind of ridiculous. Uh, but anytime you get into Adelhard, especially when he's doing some of his internal monologue, he has got some amazing one-liners in there that show his his inner thoughts of his plans, and I think I would be cool with just a series just all about him. With even if we're not having like the protagonist as like the at the forefront of the story, I would love to see more about just his character. So some of it I'm really excited about, and I think it's great as far as the writing. Some of it is falling flat for me, but we're getting a healthy balance, I guess.
Yeah. I think I'm in a similar boat as you. Adelhard was a surprise, and as far as I know, he is not a new character. He was, as I was reading before, he was a part of a mobile game that came out shortly before The Force Awakens. I don't think that mobile game is no longer active or running, but he was one of the characters in that game. I think he was the primary antagonist of that. So, for those, if anybody's listening and has actually played that game, let us know what you think about Adelhard. Uh,
That was
I
a
never played
uprising,
that.
right?
Yeah, I think it was like Uprising, which this is called Insurgency Uprising. So there might be some story crossover there, or maybe they're referencing things we don't. Maybe I didn't catch any of that because obviously I didn't play the game, but maybe there's some crossover there with, or I don't know how closely they're following it, but it's cool if they are. I imagine not a very large amount of people played that game, so uh, still a fun villain, like you said. I enjoy those fiery, driven Imperial characters. One of my favorite characters in this new era of Star Wars is Director Krennic from Rogue One, and I get a lot of things like him, very self-driven, very motivated by his own personal gains, and I think those are kind of the best and most fun Imperial characters to work with and read about.
Yeah, they definitely have their place in the empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a character with those type of ambitions, part of the Rebel Alliance, you know,
Yeah.
and how quickly he would be kicked out of it. But yeah, the fact that he is so evil, and it makes you wonder, like, what, almost like the evil people of our world history, like Napoleon or like Hitler and stuff like that. It's like it's such a similar mentality and mindset
Hmm.
that he has in his climb to power. Even so much as I think there was the second part of issue 1. Um, it was that, what was it called? The Rising. It
I
was
think
like
so.
issue 1.5 in there. Even in there, when he's like putting out all the propaganda to show that the empire is still alive, and if anyone's whispering about it being dead, then they will be punished,
Hmm.
by death. They will be wiped out immediately if they are even whispering about it. So just the fact that he is so evil is very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And he's not even a Sith. He's just
No.
someone that just wants to climb to power.
Yeah. No. And this is a fun time period because the top of the empire is gone. Vader and Palpatine are no more. Thrawn's at this point still out in the other galaxy, so he's not around. So it's fun seeing all these different Imperial characters kind of try to snatch the power that's left behind. And we got some other Imperial cameos that we want to talk about. Um, Ray Sloan. I know you have not read the Aftermath trilogies, but she is one of the main characters of that trilogy. So it'll be interesting to see how her story lines up in this comic. I don't know how often she's going to be used, but she's a very fan favorite character of the Empire and has connections to the beginning of the First Order. So be cool to see where that goes, if anything. But I'm with you. I would love it if Adelhard was the primary antagonist of this whole series. I'm
Hmm.
kind of hoping, and I think based on the previews, I think that's kind of where we're heading. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and in my deep dives down Wikipedia, I accidentally scrolled to the part where it talks about his demise and his end. I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit too far. Now I'm giving
Oh,
myself some spoilers and stuff.
oh
But
wow.
so I know kind of what happens, but that's not until the novels. So I'm like, okay, how do we get from this comic to that? What are
Hmm.
the major events that are going to happen in between? But yeah, I'm excited to learn more about these Imperials as well. Like Commander Bragg, that's a cool one. Like,
Hmm.
who is this giant that's in this armor, and where did he come from?
Yeah, very
At first,
cool.
at first I thought it was a droid when I looked at it in the comic,
Well,
because he's so massive.
yeah, it invokes that kind of I forget what they were called in the Mandalorian, the troopers that Moff Gideon was working on in season 2. Those big droid troopers that Luke Skywalker came and chopped up.
Oh, the Dark
Kind of
Trooper.
the Dark Troopers, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of looked like a Dark Trooper to me at first, or like a concept of a Dark Trooper or something. But yeah, no, that's fun. I'm enjoying seeing a juiced up, raged filled Imperial soldier, which we don't get a lot of those in Star Wars. More comic booky than you would think out of Star Wars. They usually don't go the comic booky route when it comes to that. But
Hmm.
uh, are there any kind of initial thoughts when it comes to the direction of the story? Because for me, I think it took some turns I wasn't really expecting. I didn't necessarily dislike, but it was a little different than I was hoping it would be.
Um, I don't really have any thoughts as to where it's going yet. I'm kind of just waiting to be surprised by it. There was a couple moments in the storytelling that felt a little jumpy to me. Um, there was a part where I think, what are they in the? How do you pronounce that system that they're in, the Anoet or
I say, yeah, I think I said a know it or a not or something like that.
yeah? And there's the part where Luke is out that's in some sort of courtyard with that Sith compass, I think he's
Mm,
holding, and then he gets jumped by the acolytes of the Beyond, and
yes.
then shortly after that, it shows him like consoling Leia, and then after that, he's on the ship rescuing that team that they put together, that the rebels have put together, that are trying to
Hmm.
infiltrate. And I'm like, how is this? How is he going from one spot to another without any explanation of how he gets there? So I'm kind of wondering like why it's so jumpy, and that's what's taking me out of it a little bit.
Okay.
So, but I understand that there's only 12 issues, and so they have to fit so much into just these 12 issues. So there's going to be parts in between where I'm not going to get things explained. I'm just going to have to go with it. But
Right.
there are those moments that kind of take me out of it a little bit. But
But
that being said, I am excited to learn more about, because I haven't even read was it Shadow of the Sith?
yes,
Yeah,
with
I haven't.
the Luke and Lando novel.
Yeah, so from what I hear, that tells a lot more about the acolytes of the beyond and more about Ochi of Bestoon and all of that. So
It does.
yeah, like, and here we are exploring those characters more. So that's exciting for me.
Yeah,
But I just want this story to be told a little more seamlessly than what it is doing right now.
that's fair. I I think I was a little not taken back, but a little more surprised that the direction it went. Because the way it was advertised for me, it felt like this was really going to be um, Luke, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Lando. Like they're going to be figuring all this mess out themselves. There wasn't going to be kind of a focus on these other rebel characters. I didn't really. I forgot some of the names of the characters that the team they put together. Um, I remember one from he was Star Wars Resistance character, Yeager. That's the only one I really remember. I thought that was just a fun connection there.
Right,
Um,
I recognize that last name too, and I thought it was the same, but I didn't want to assume. But I did
it was
recognize the
him.
last
Yeah, and
name.
I was really that perked up a little bit because I think that's an underrated show and I enjoy that character a lot. But um, yeah, I was really hoping for and we got a little bit in the first issue with Leia confronting Vader's grave, which was to me the highlight so far of the story. Um, I really wanted to deal with and dive into Leia's thoughts and Luke's thoughts, and yeah, we just won this big battle, but there's still a lot of work to do. We're rebuilding a government, we're rebuilding the galaxy, um, and we got a little bit of that from the rebel side with Mon Mothma and Akbar and things, but I was not really expecting us to kind of take this little detour and then start bringing in the underworld of it all with Bib Fortuna and the Spice Runners of Kajimi. And um, I'm kind of with you. It feels a little all over the place. And it is the first four issues. So obviously the story's not done. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to obviously give it an opportunity to see where it goes and see how it all connects. But um, it just feels like a lot of ideas are being thrown in the first four issues. A lot of cool ideas, a lot of great concepts, but it's just kind of all over the place for me to kind of keep up with what's going on.
Right, and we are getting the like reintroduction of certain characters. Like one of the people in that little Rebel Alliance group is Kess Dameron, which is Poe's
Poe's
father, I
father,
believe,
yes.
and we've seen him in previous issues. The one that's coming to mind is that one where I believe it's he or his wife was trapped in Echo Base,
I believe it
and
was his wife, yes.
yeah,
He,
she was trapped there, and they were trying to get her out.
mm-hmm.
And I think that happened in one of the last Star Wars series. And then Ziva or Zeva Bliss, Ziva Bliss,
Mm-hmm. Zori's
is it
mother, I believe.
Dory's mom? Yeah. So yeah, we're getting reintroductions of a lot of those characters. So it's cool to see them show up again, and how it's all being woven together. So I am enjoying that part too.
Yeah, yeah. I do like that the connections, and I know Alex Segura, the writer, he is very. He's not like any other writers. A lot of the writers will reference works they've done in the past or bring in characters they've used in the past.
Mhm.
Charles Soule is very famous of doing that. Um, Alex Segura, he wrote that pretty, I think, underrated Poe Dameron young adult novel. And then he's done some other stuff with the comics as well. So kind of fun seeing him bring in his little characters and kind of meshing this and kind of telling a cool story. Um, personally, I really enjoying uh, I want more of them just because I think it's a fun concept. The Acolytes of the Beyond. Did you have any thoughts of them? I know you said you haven't read the Aftermath, and we kind of learn a little bit of their origins in the Aftermath and where they come from. But did you have any initial thoughts on them?
Um, I am always a sucker for any, either whether it be Sith story or any of anything that's dealing with the Sith that's like behind the scenes, like Acolytes of Beyond. Obviously, seem like obviously they are Sith cultists, but it also seems like they would be a group of people who are pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Because obviously they're the ones who go about the bringing back the resurrection of Palpatine, or trying to revive his clone bodies and on Exegol. And so I'm always a sucker for those stories, just to see what kind of weird, dark mysticism is happening in the background. I remember the first time I ever saw them when I saw the Rise of Skywalker movie. I had no idea who they were because I hadn't read any books that led up to that at that point. So I was very confused as to who all of these people were standing in this like stadium type of arena staring at the Emperor. I'm like, who are all these people? Where did they
What's going on here?
Yeah. So to learn that there is this like gigantic Sith cult, I mean, that's cool. It's almost like was it Skull and Crossbones Society, like Underworld Society, So I have no idea who they are because, still need to read the material, but it seems very intriguing to me. And I would love to hear more about them, especially when it comes to like Sith artifacts and stuff like that. Like I loved reading stuff in the Old Republic with Darth Bane, how he was always hunting Sith artifacts and holocrons to find out more secrets of the Sith. So
that's cool.
Anytime you open up that can of worms, I'm in. I get invested very quickly.
Same here. Those are some of my favorite Star Wars stories, dealing with the ancient history within the universe. I think that's why I've really loved Dr. Aphra as a character in her stories. Does a lot of cool stuff like that as well. No, the first 4 issues are called Insurgency Rising. The next 4, I believe, are called... I did not look this up or write this down, folks. I apologize.
Republic Under Siege.
Republic Under Siege. Okay. Yeah. And then the last one is like The Last Stand, I believe. So heading into this next set of 4 issues, do you have any kind of hopes or desires, or do you have any thoughts about where the story might go?
Like I said earlier, I would love to see more Adelhard. Just because I anything that he says, just some of the lines that he says hit so hard, like brilliant dialogue that Soul is writing. I'm sorry, not Soul. Alex Segura is writing for that character. So anything more about him, anything about the Acolytes of the Beyond, I'm all here for that. I'm just really hoping it's not as jumpy from panel to panel, where I'm confused. Like I was very confused. Do you remember that scene? I think it's issue 3, where that Inquisitor, what you think is an Inquisitor, is standing right there.
Yes.
And then in the very next panel is Luke with a very similar outfit. And so I'm like, wait, is that Inquisitor Luke or is it somebody else? And it didn't connect it very well to me because I thought, I'm like, is it the same person and it's just Luke in disguise? So
I was also...
it didn't flow well at all. And I'm like, this is extremely confusing. So I'm hoping that we don't get anything more like that. I hope it flows better. It's probably going to follow a similar pattern and formula where this next arc will look like all hope is lost by the end of it, similar to like an Empire Strikes Back ending.
Sure.
We'll probably get something like that where, things look very bleak at the end. And then in the last, the third story arc is probably when we'll get our,
triumphant
story,
Yeah. Or a triumphant victory. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very also curious about that Inquisitor character. The way the comic set it up, it was like somebody we were supposed to know, and I did not recognize them or know who they were. And it was interesting, but I'm the Inquisitors are another thing in Star Wars right now that I'm very confused about. Like, how many are there? How many are alive? Where are they all at? They kind of just introduced Inquisitor here every now and then that I'm like, where did they come from? Like you haven't referenced this character, so I'll be curious to see how they wrap that or tie that into the future story. But like you, I am kind of hoping for a more darker turn this next arc.
Yeah, it seems like as far as Inquisitors, they kind of introduce a new one whenever they want.
Right, a new cool dark side character.
Yeah, they haven't given us an exact number of how many there are, or as to when they've all died. I think at this point in the timeline, where we're reading these comics, I don't think they're around anymore.
That's what I assumed as well. And I know there's one that shows up in Ahsoka. I think, but he's not really technically alive. He's more of dead, I guess. He was reanimated. So um, I don't know. It's interesting. They kind of play loose with it. I don't really think they want to define it just in case some writer or some creator wants to use an Inquisitor at some point. So they're probably just trying to be as flexible with it as possible right now, I'm assuming.
This one that we saw in issue 3, at first, when it shows that it's a female character and she had very pale skin, my first thought was, is this Asajj Ventress, like, in disguise? I briefly thought that before it's shown that it's actually Reyna from the Acolytes of the Beyond.
Yeah.
But for a brief moment, I was thinking it might have been.
I had a similar thought.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if that adds up, but it would have been cool, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It would have been a stretch.
It would have been, yeah. I don't see the comics really playing around too loosely with animated characters like that. Just because of, Filoni likes to play with those characters and bring them into live action. So I don't know if they would be tempted to mess around too much with those, but who knows? Before we wrap up, I wanted to. Quick story. I bought these all. I read the first issue, and then life happened, and I didn't get a chance to read all these issues till this week. And last weekend, I was at a new store in my hometown, new like collectible action figure shop, and they have a lot of different stuff: anime, Marvel, DC, Star Wars too. And they have a local creator who does 3D printed work, and just happened to stumble across it, and I wanted to show you. It was a good deal, and I was like, this looks great on my bookshelf. And it was just because I read the first issue. Bought this 3D printed Vader helmet. Pretty accurate. I looked at some of the images on Google, and I was like, they did a really good job.
The
charred Vader mask.
Yeah.
Somebody's a big Kylo Ren fan like me. I was like, this is cool. And then, of course, it was a big selling point of the comic. They were advertising this as like the main image of a lot of the covers, and of course Leia has her cool scene with the mask, and I bought it because I was like, this is pretty rad, honestly.
It is a cool image too. I'm trying to remember who did that variant. It was Rod Reese did that variant.
Rod Reese. Okay. And Rod Reese has done some really cool art. And I bought a couple of his Ahsoka variants too. So
and that's another point in this series where after Leia goes and has her little moment with Vader's funeral pyre, she picks up the helmet and then tosses it away. So where does it go after that? We know
what's the journey?
In Kylo's possession, but we don't know how.
A lot of questions that they've been throwing over the years that we still have not got answers for, just like how Maz Kanata has Luke's saber, or Anakin's saber. So
yeah, they just keep dangling this carrot in front of us.
I think those stories will be told eventually. I was kind of hoping. I'm hoping maybe this will, like I said, this story's not over, so maybe we'll get some more answers. But I'm hoping this story will kind of bridge some gaps to the OT and the sequels and kind of pave the way for those future stories. You brought up something cool I wanted to talk about earlier. Just came to my mind is the connection to, like, this is a year or two after Endor, and then of course the Mandalorian I think is 5 years after Endor. So are we going to see those characters pop up, or are we going to see a connection to those? I don't know how they would make it work, but I would love to see a journey of what Luke is doing after the Battle of Jakku and how we eventually get to him in The Mandalorian, because there's a lot of Luke stuff that I feel like they've really put Luke on the back burner when it comes to after the OT. And I was hoping, and he really saved the day in this story. I think that was probably, issue 4 was probably my favorite out of this first 4. I love seeing Luke just be Luke and be an awesome hero. And I love seeing him save the day, even if it felt a little kind of last minute cliche kind of hero. But I loved it as a person that loves Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy. But do you any hopes for what's next after this series, or what's going forward?
I think they're still trying to flesh out what to do with Luke's character, because before Disney bought Star Wars, we know Luke went on to revive the Jedi Academy, I believe on Yavin,
Hmm.
and then he started the whole new Jedi Order, the new Jedi Order. So we know what happened in the expanded universe, but obviously things did not go that way after Disney bought Star Wars. Things went a completely different direction. So I think they're still trying to figure out what to do with his character. We know, I think a lot of people are speculating that Rey Skywalker is going to be the new person who starts the new Jedi Order.
Hmm.
So she's kind of adopting Luke's storyline in a way, 30 years later,
Hmm.
where, or maybe 40 years later. But so I think they're still trying to figure out how to make his story work and to how to do that character justice before we get to The Last Jedi and we see his end.
Hmm.
So uh, I'm I don't want to have too many expectations on it,
Fair.
because I'm not the biggest fan of how they dealt with Luke at the end.
Okay.
Um, because growing up, Luke was my hero, and here we are post Last Jedi, and I'm like, they kind of did my character wrong, I felt. So I think they're still trying to kind of breathe new life into that character to make all the fans happy.
Hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I don't have any expectations for it, but I am excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and as well, this is also dealing with kind of within the same timeline as what is it, Skeleton Crew, because that happens
Yeah.
around the same time as Mandalorian and after the Aftermath trilogy as well.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if there will be any other connections, because we also have the Battle of Endor, um, and then the. Did you see the leak photos? I don't know if they were leak or promotional photos, but one of the characters from that made-for-TV Ewok movie
Oh,
is going to be
Teak.
in Skeleton. Yeah, Teak is going to
Yes,
be
Teak.
Skeleton Crew. So does that mean Teak is now canon? And if so, does that mean
Those Battle of
those movies
Endor.
are now canon?
Yeah, it's a good
So
question.
yeah. So that's my question. Will there be any connection to those movies, or any at least cameos, or because I mean they keep pulling stuff from those movies. The blurgs from Mandalorian
Yeah,
originally came from those movies.
that's true.
Wicket was in those movies. Now Teak is canon. So
Well,
will
and
there be there
the
as well?
I think the witch in the is it I think it's the Caravan of Courage where the witch shows up. I think they retcon that years later into saying that was the Night Sister. So
Oh, the one that turns into a crow or a raven?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they retcon that to being a Night Sister years later. But um, yeah, it's possible. There's actually a really fun miniseries going on right now. It's called just Ewoks, written by Steve Orlando, who is writing the awesome Scarlet Witch series. If anybody's not reading that, definitely check that out. But he is writing the miniseries of like immediately after Endor, the Ewoks transition into. It's really fun because it's like the Ewoks are like coming together and like, what do we do now? What if this happens again? How are we going to defend ourselves? Do we need to like you know, have like a military? It's kind of interesting that I would never expect from an Ewok story, but it's a fun little 4-issue series.
Yeah. Savage murder bears. I would love
Yeah.
that.
So they're really diving into the Ewoks and that era of Star Wars. I know it's Return of the Jedi just had their 40, so I guess they're still milking that cow as much as they can. But they, yeah, you bring up some good points. I am very curious of. I feel like they they don't with the original trilogy cast. They don't really. I feel like their Disney overall is just worried about how they're portrayed because I feel like in the movies and shows they kind of want us to stray away from those characters and those stories. And then now I feel like we're getting to the point in the comics where we're like also wanting to stray away from them and not tell too much about what's going on with them or anything. And my biggest hope for this series going forward is I want to see, and we've referenced it in the Mandalorian and the other shows, is what does the New Republic look like? How is that starting up? We I think they mentioned in one of the issues, I think it was issue 1 or 2, where they go to Chandrilla and it says the current capital of the New Republic, and it's like the way this comic was laid out, it makes it feel like Endor just happened like 2 days ago. So how did you guys already come up with the capital? Like, where's the decision making process, and how is this government being laid out? Because we really hadn't got any of that. Where's the concepts and the plans of this new government? And they're kind of being hush hush about that part, which I'm hoping we get more answers about that.
Yeah, I think there was kind of almost a little montage right there where it showed they were talking about Operation Cinder,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked about how all those planets and systems were being just wrecked by the Empire during Operation Cinder. So I think we're supposed to assume that there's been at least a little bit of time passed there,
Okay.
because, like you said, yeah, there's a like makeshift government starting to be set up on Chandrilla, and I think that's obviously because that's the home planet of Mon Mothma. So I think that was just like a natural place for them to pick because of her like dominant character, you know, like of her position in
Her
the
status. Yeah.
yeah. So um, yeah, I think we're supposed to assume that there's been a little bit of time, maybe a few months or so,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
of that little montage, but they
That would
don't
make sense.
explain it a whole lot.
No, they're very loose with the timeline of this story so far.
Right. We're supposed to just use our suspension of disbelief there, I guess.
Yeah, which is okay. I mean, I can accept that. But the government thing, especially the New Republic and the new canon, is kind of what like that's something I want answered a lot because I love the sequel trilogy personally, but one of my biggest complaints with the sequels was how is this new government working? Why did it fail? We didn't really get any answers about that. They kind of tried to downplay the government role and the creation of the First Order as little as possible, and I'm glad they're kind of exploring that finally. But I'm hoping this series will kind of shift and explain more of the inner workings of the New Republic.
It would be great if we got some sort of films in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens to show. I know we're getting some of it in some of the shows, like they show a little bit in Mandalorian,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be great to get more films or shows that explore how the New Republic started, what are the troubles it ran into, and why did it fail.
And how the First Order came to power. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's always been a mystery to me, but hopefully we'll get there. But overall, how would you, if you had to give this a letter grade, what would you give this first 4 issues as a letter grade?
I would say B plus,
Okay.
because I'm not 100% like emotionally invested into it, just because I feel like the writing was a bit jumpy. But what's giving it that like B plus, A minus borderline grade is the dialogue from Adelhard.
Okay.
Like for example, the very end of that, what is it, issue 1.5 that was done at the very end of the first issue, when he was talking about his whole propaganda machine, and he says a lie is only a lie when discovered. Before then, for me, as long as you can stoke the flame of deception, a lie is your truth, and I will share my truth with my people.
Oh,
That line,
it's
I
a
was
good
like,
line.
well, that is a great line. So some of the writing is giving it a high grade for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's keeping it alive for me is lines from him and where
Mm-hmm.
they're going to go with that character. So I'm going to say B plus right now, maybe an A minus. So we'll see how it goes further on.
I need to reread it. I've only read these once, but that line was really good. That was very Andor like. That was a pretty good line. I like
Right.
that a lot. Yeah. Mm. I think I would say B. Just a B. I am excited to see where it goes, and I thought it was a good start to the series. Obviously, don't judge a book by its cover. I want to see how it plays out, but I am hoping for, and I know we've gotten a lot of them, but I think just the original characters. I hope they have a bigger role going forward because I feel like they were advertised as the forefront of this story, and they really haven't been a whole lot aside from Luke. Um, I'm hoping, like, I don't think Han Solo shows up in this arc at all, and I think he's on like 2 or 3 of the covers. So um,
Yeah, he's not in the
I
series
think
at
he's
all.
in the first issue, like after the Endor, but um, we'll see. I'm hoping we get some more of their perspective on this battle, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Leia has to be pregnant soon, or should be, because of I think Ben Solo was born pretty quickly after the Battle of Endor. So I don't know if that'll be a story point going forward, but uh, just curious to see how it'll all tie into the bigger, larger story of the galaxy, and hoping for big things because I've read some of Alex Segura's work and I've really enjoyed his writing. So
We I think at the beginning of issue 1 we do see the wedding, right, of Han and Leia.
okay, I didn't realize that. Okay,
Well, I mean, I think it kind of applies it because it shows them standing in almost like a little ceremony amongst all the Ewoks and all that. So I think that's the point where
okay,
they get married.
that's the from the Princess and the Scoundrel novel. Is that correct?
Right, right, right. And
Okay,
that's
I
the
haven't read
Princess
that one.
and the Scoundrels, like when they go on their honeymoon finally, right?
Okay, yeah, I haven't read that one yet actually. So I have it. I just have not read that one. Okay, well that would make sense. Yeah, because I think they're wearing on the cover similar outfits. So
Right. But
okay,
right away, Han takes off. At the
okay,
what is that? The second or third page of the first issue.
yeah, he's gone
He
pretty quickly.
takes off. Yeah.
Yeah,
So who knows when Ben is conceived?
yeah. I would imagine soon. So
Yeah.
we're
So
running,
Han's got to come
running.
back for that.
Right, we got to do something. Maybe it happened on the honeymoon. I'm sure.
Yeah, because
Whenever that honeymoon is.
I don't think Ben Solo was a child of the Force. So
No, I
it's
don't think
definitely got to
so.
be Han.
Right. Well, Justin, I thank you for joining us today. I hope to do the next couple arcs with you, and then maybe we'll do a big overview of how the series went and our final thoughts. But um, again, you want to tell the people where they could find you if they want to follow you on social media?
Sure. Just Justin at the Nerdy Bookshelf on Instagram. Just there is underscores in between each word. Who knows? I may be changing that name soon though. It's getting old, so I want to do something else with it. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
that's where it's at for right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Nick. Thank you guys for joining us and supporting the channel and the podcast. This will go up hopefully soon. Um, we will look forward to doing some more comic episodes. We might do the Ewok one. Now that I'm interested in hoping Justin will pick up that one. That was a fun one as well. So maybe we'll get Justin back on to talk more comics. But thank you
Whatever you want to
guys.
talk about. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm here. I have all the comics anyway, so let's
There
talk
we
about
go.
them.
I'm a comic. Carmelo likes comics, but he really waits for the trades. So I usually have to wait to get him to read the comics. So you might be my go-to for the comics now.
Just let me know.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you for following and supporting us. Make sure to like us on Spotify, follow us on Instagram. I'm at Nick from Naboo, and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. So thank you guys, and may the force be with you.
Bye.